tools and technology. So again, we've got the problems that people came to us with, and then we've sort of got the source down here. So slow dashboards is quite a common thing that people come to us with. And I feel like my first question whenever somebody says this is like, are you using the tool to model? And in a lot of cases, 70% of cases, that is the underlying cause. So I guess the main point here is that a lot of tools are trying to add features to sort of create this black box where everything is in one tool. But we don't recommend using the modeling within your dashboard. We recommend having a separate dashboard modeling tool that is primarily for that, and using dashboards just to bring the modeling to life, because typically the modeling that's available in those tools is quite basic. It doesn't really scale. Teams might not be able to work with them. So yeah, the common problem here was just using the in-tool modeling layer. Trying to integrate or extract niche data sources is another quite common problem that aren't available on Fivetran or Airflow or anything like that. So the common solution here was just building something custom Python extraction, but bearing in mind that that has an added an ongoing maintenance cost that's really difficult to attribute time to, because you don't control the end API and when that's going to update. No bespoke metrics. So a lot of companies, they hit a wall where they can't get to the meat of the conversation. They're not always able to find out where different metrics overlap. And again, this comes from a lack of a modeling layer. Weirdly, this year we've seen 20%, 3% of companies don't have modeling at all. We didn't encounter this before this year. It seems really odd that it's been one of the top things that we've encountered this year. So yeah, you need a modeling layer, I guess, is the learning on that. And last but not least, non-scalable solutions. I didn't want to name and shame any particular tools, but not all tools are created equal. So if you're struggling to scale a tool, maybe talk to us and I'll give you the dirt on which ones we don't like. So in terms of key problems there, scalability is probably the biggest obstacle. 90% of business level accounts, according to Dataversity, encounter scalability challenges. And a similar thing there is that 50% of people change their data tools because of a lack of scalability. So our key problems are that modeling is the core of your data pipeline. Be wary of these all-in-one solutions that promise you the world, which is really difficult because all of them promise the same things and they all advertise themselves as being able to do everything. Many tools offer free or low-cost plans to start with, but they encourage bad, by which I mean costly, behavior at scale. And data is a crucial business asset, and you should not be changing business tools every few years. Candice, right?
100% agree. Thanks, Oliver. I think we talked about data strategies before. So once we have that, then you should be guiding your modeling layer. So part of that data strategy, you should be nailing down your core KPIs. And then that should solve a lot of the problems that you talked about here, Oliver. So, and then costly tools. Again, it requires that diligence. What are we trying to do here? What do we need to model? And making sure you don't bring in everything, be selective. That's how you're going to control the costs. And absolutely, data is such a crucial asset. You should be owning it, you should be growing it instead of rebuilding it every couple of years.
We have sometimes we have quite common scenarios where people come to us, one tool is suddenly very expensive. They think about changing to another tool or reformatting. And then because that tool is quite expensive and a lot of people are looking to move, the tool changes its pricing, Candice. And it's when should people know when to ask that question? When should they consider migrating?
I guess really depending on the tool and the problem they're encountering. Sometimes people like to, dismiss a tool entirely. But sometimes it's a misuse of the tool. Sometimes the tool can do 50% of the things that you needed to do, and you need to shift off the rest of it to something else. So it's about a detailed look. I would say don't dismiss the tool immediately. I think, Oliver, you mentioned lots of people blame the dashboard, the reporting tool being slow. And sometimes the root cause isn't the reporting tool. So you really need to drill down to the bottom root cause of it, and then have a diligent way of resolving it, and not making a rash decision to say, okay, let's change to another reporting tool without having solved the underlying problem. Then you're going to encounter the same problem again. And then what do? You just change to another tool, but then likely 6 months effort gone without any data value.
I see Yannick is nodding furiously on this. Do you have anything to add to this, Yannick?
No, but I do feel like what you said rings very true, because I do remember that we had this question in the past where we said we might want to move away from Metabase, because there were a few people who said, like, back then said it can't do what I needed to. But then after like deep diving into what they were trying to do, it turned out that the tool itself wasn't really the problem. It was basically like no tool could ever create a graph as complex as you are trying to. And the issue is that you're trying to create this graph. Like, we should start with what you're trying to do and then see if that's even what you should be doing. And it turned out fairly quickly that the problem was the question the person had, not the fact that we used Metabase. So we did actually end up staying with it, and I'm still quite happy.
Great input there. So yeah, core recommendations here. Your business model and key priorities should be factored in when choosing tools. Certainly if you are in a field where there are restrictions, you've got HIPAA compliancy that you need to think about, that will change the way that you choose your tools. From a technology point of view, we always recommend choosing a composable stack, and that scalability should be a key factor to consider. A lot of people, I think they think of cost first and then they don't think about scalability. And then from a people point of view, consider how easy it is to hire people when choosing technologies, because niche tools are typically cheaper because less people are using them and they need more people to get on there. But then you struggle to find the people who know those tools, and stick to tools that rely on known languages. A lot more people know SQL than they know Python or R, for example.
Tom has some thoughts, right?
Oh.
Yeah, I wanted to ask your opinion on because I think one of the good things of like changing a tool is also that it kind of gives you a clean slate of where you are. And I feel that that's a big problem also. That, for example, in my case, the modeling layer, I kind of keep building on top, and then I have like hundreds of things that are useless and they just slow everything. And with the BI tool, it's the same. I've created like hundreds of dashboards that no one uses anymore. And even like worse, sometimes they are not updated. They use some old logic that doesn't apply anymore, but people still look at them and then they are like, oh, how is this number? And then the number is wrong though. So yeah, I just wanted to get your opinion on any advice on how you maintain and how you like kind of keep going back on top of everything we have to do to make sure we keep getting value out of it.
I think 100% there is a point that you need to start from scratch. We've seen that a lot, like a migration project, or we've seen companies with thousands of data models and lots of duplications. People don't know which version to use, number being inconsistent. And when you get to that stage, the easiest way is actually building from scratch. But when you build from scratch, it goes back to the things we talked about. What is the strategy and what is the core value for the business? And start from that and iteratively expand on that. And in the process of that, putting in governance, putting in data dictionary, version control, so you don't get into the same situation. We see this a lot, especially early stage startups. There's so many things to do. You need to constantly catch up with the business. So you're constantly building, or everybody is constantly building on top of each other. So you get to that stage, very understandably and very common. But then at some point, we do need to take a step back and look at how do we deal with this and how can we rebuild. And we would recommend starting from scratch at that point. You can migrate certain code, but you need to start with the core and then build on top. again, starting from blank.
I have the stat on this. So 80% of the time when people are thinking of migration, we end up starting from scratch. I actually think that like there's a really good point there, which migration projects in my mind are sort of the biggest wasted opportunity that we probably see, precisely because you have that chance to look at everything from a scratch. You've got a clean slate. But typically people just want to copy things into a new system. And I think strategically, it's probably the biggest wasted opportunity you've got. But I also think it's quite difficult if you're an internal data person to say, hey, now I need to go back into this work that I've sort of already done and just make sure that I'm refactoring it is a difficult conversation to have potentially. But if then you're not spending time on maintenance and you're not spending time with slow loading, which has cost implications because things get messy, then there is a business use case there and saying, actually, we can save money if I refactor things. Got a great tool just on this section from Advika at MMC. She said, data tools are changing all the time. The thing to avoid are tools which claim to do everything. Find a suite of tools which are all excellent at their individual tasks and can easily be switched on.